This is the first Crochet with OvertonFancies video, and for this we are doing a baby blanket. This baby blanket has a Highland cow that's been crocheted into the corner. For this piece we're using a size 4 yarn and a K or 10.5 or 6.5 millimeter hook. We'll begin by creating 89 chains. When we turn after creating the chains, we're going to skip 3 stitches. The first 2 are turning chains, and the third one is part of the V-stitch. And then we'll go straight into that V-stitch, which is to skip 1, which you've already done. And then in the very next chain, you're going to do a double crochet, and then chain, do a double crochet in the same stitch, and then skip 1, and then you'll start in on your next V-stitch. Essentially, there'll be 2 stitches skipped in between each used stitch. And you'll continue this all the way down the chain. So the very last chain is skipped, but I pull in my tail, and that kind of ties that stitch in, and it hides the tail for you as well. Now that we're working on top of the V-stitches that we put in previously, all you do is you do a double crochet, chain, double crochet in the middle of each V-stitch that you made before. And you do that down the entire length. There should be 29 V-stitches. At the end of each row, you'll want to do 2 chain and then turn. And those 2 chain are your turning chains, and they get you up to the right level for your double crochet. Additionally, it helps provide a little scalloped edge. After you put in your last stitch, you do 1 chain, cinch it down, and then you need to place your tail on your needle. When I tuck in my tail, I like to go down a row or 2 from that top bit and just kind of work it along underneath. It's a little bit harder with the V-stitch because you need to make sure that it doesn't show. But the multiple different colors that this one has really helps. And then you just have that little bit there, and I usually like to keep it away from the edge because the edge can get a little more wear and tear on it. Just trim it close, and the blanket portion's all done. For the muzzle, we'll begin with 5 chains. So I do my slip knot and then 5 chains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. For the next step, I'll skip that first chain and go in the second chain from the hook. And I'll do 3 single crochet. And then for this bottom one, I want to do 3 total in it so that it kind of builds around that corner and I can start working up the other side. And I just kind of tuck that tail right in there. Then you go up the opposite side of that chain and you'll do 2 single crochets. And then in that last one on that side, you'll actually put 2 in, and you put 1 on the other side already, so that gives you a total of 3, so it will equal the same as the opposite end. At this point, I like to mark the last stitch of my round, because now we're working in a round. And I'll do 2 single crochets in every stitch. And you'll notice that I'm just kind of trapping that tail as I go. And now I'll go around and do 1 single crochet in each stitch. After that round, I just do 1 slip stitch and I fasten it off. You'll want to leave a fairly long tail for this so that you have something to stitch it on with. For the head, you'll want to start with a tan color. And you'll need to make a magic ring. To make a magic ring, you'll twist around and then reach through that hole to grab your working yarn and pull it up through, but you got to keep everything kind of held together here. You can tighten it down a little bit so that you've got a smaller loop. And then you just yarn over and pull through that loop. And that's going to hold that together in your magic ring. Then the next step is to place 6 single crochet into the magic ring. So you go through the center of the magic ring every time, making sure that the tail doesn't draw through. I like to tighten it down a little bit as I go so that it doesn't, so it's not as floppy. I don't recommend tightening it down all the way until you get all 6 in, and then you do 1 of the next round. Then you can tighten it up. So our next round is going to be 2 single crochet in each stitch. And this kind of just ties it together and puts it back into a circle. So I'm going into that first stitch that I put in. I'm going to have the tail within it. And that's when I tighten that down. You see how that was open and now it's nice and tight with just a little spot that you can see in the very center. And if you pull tight enough, you can hardly see that at all. So that's my first one for that stitch. So then I'm going to put my second one in the same stitch. I'm going to pause for a second and put my stitch marker in the last stitch of the previous round. And then I'll continue around, putting 2 in each stitch. So that's the last one in that round, and you'll notice that the center of my circle got a little bit wider, and that's just because I was manipulating it. So I can still pull this tail, and you want to make sure you do that before the tail disappears entirely. And you just kind of try and manipulate it so that it's nice and tight, so that you can't see any light through it. 2 single crochet in the first one. And then 1 single crochet in the next, and then 2 single crochet in the next one, and then 1 single crochet in the next. So you'll do that a total of 6 different times, which should leave you with 18 at the end. This time I will do an increase on the first stitch, so 2 single crochet in the same one, and then I'll do 1 single crochet and 1 single crochet again. So an increase here, 2 single crochet in the same one, and then 1 single crochet and 1 single crochet 2 times. So that's for a total of 24 stitches. 2 single crochet in the same stitch, and then do 3 single crochet in a row. And repeat that a total of 6 times on this round. And that gives you a total of 30 stitches. So 2 single crochet in the first stitch, and then 4 single crochet in the next 4 stitches. And then you'll repeat that a total of 6 times. And that gives you a total of 36 stitches. For the last round, just single crochet around the entire piece. To finish it off, I just slip stitch and then fasten it off, leaving a long tail. For the body, we'll use the tan yarn again, and we'll begin with the 5 chains. Then we'll start in the second chain from the hook, and we'll do 3 single crochets. Then in this last chain, I'm going to do 4 single crochets. So you can see how we've got the 3 going down, and then the 4 that are all around this spot. It does leave a little hole, but it's not a big deal because we'll cover that up. We'll do 2 stitches in the next 2 chains. And then this last chain we'll do 2 in the same one. And that just helps it to turn the corner so that you can start working in the whole thing. And I'll do 2 stitches in every stitch all the way around. And that will give you 22 stitches. Then I'll do an increase in the first stitch, and then just a single stitch in the next one, and I'll repeat that for a total of 11 times. And that gives me a total of 33 stitches. For this last round, I'll do 1 single crochet in each stitch. Then I'll do a slip stitch and fasten it off. For the legs, you want to chain 11 in the tan color. Starting in the second chain from the hook, 9 single crochet. Now we have those 9. In the last chain, we'll want to do 5 single crochet in the same chain. This not only turns the corner, but it adds some bulk. And that's going to provide the little foot down at the bottom, make it a little bit bigger. And then we go back up the opposite side of the chain there with 9 single crochet. And so that's how it should look with some really tight ones around that corner. Then you chain 1 and turn your piece. Now we're actually going to do 8 slip stitches because we don't want the legs to be very wide. And then we do 1 single crochet. We'll do 2 double crochets in each of the next 5 stitches. So a double crochet, and then a double crochet in that same stitch. And then repeat that 4 times, or 5 total. You can see how it's making that bigger foot there. And then we'll just mirror the other side. So we'll do 1 single crochet and then 8 slip stitches. And there's our little foot. For the feet, we'll start with tan, and we'll start by making a magic ring. And we'll do 6 single crochet in that. Pull that tighter, but not all the way tight, until after you do 1 stitch in the next one and complete that round. And that's just 1 single crochet. Then we'll pull that tight. We'll go back in that same stitch and do a 2nd single crochet. And I'll put my marker in so I can keep track of where my starting point or my ending point was. And we'll continue to put 2 single crochet in each stitch for a total of 12. 2 single crochet in the same one, and then a single. That gives us a total of 18 stitches. So now we're just going to go over the top of those and do 18 slip stitches. This is just to provide a little bit of depth to the edge of the foot. And then we'll fasten that off and repeat for the other side, leaving a long tail. For the hoof part of the foot, we're going to do a darker brown, and again start with the magic ring and do 6 single crochet. Pull it in a little, go into your first stitch you put in previously, do 1 single crochet, and pull that nice and tight because this is actually going to show. So you want to make sure that's tight, and then you can put your second single crochet in that first one. Put on your stitch marker, and we'll do 2 single crochet in each stitch, making sure that you pull with that tail as you're going along to keep things nice and tight. For this last round, you want to do 2 single crochet in one stitch and then 1 single crochet in the next. Repeat it total of 6 times. Now you do a slip stitch and fasten it off. For the ears, we'll go back to using the tan color, and we'll start with 7 chains. Starting in the second chain from the hook, we'll do 6 single crochet, then I'll do 1 chain, and then I'm going to turn and go back down this other side. Do a chain and a turn, and then we'll do 6 slip stitches in the 6 stitches below. And in that chain, we'll go ahead and do another slip stitch, and then a chain, and then another slip stitch, and continue to do 6 more slip stitches along the top. And then fasten it off. Leaving a long tail, of course. All of these have long tails. We need to make 2 horns, and for that we're going to use the off-white color. We'll make 2 of those, and we'll start by doing 5 chains. Beginning in the second chain from the hook, do 2 single crochets, and then crochet 2 together in the last 2 chains. And fasten that off. We begin the hair by doing 12 chain, and then starting in the 3rd chain from the hook, we'll do a double crochet. And then 2 more double crochet. For a total of 3. Then we have 5 single crochet, you then do 2 slip stitches. We'll do 3 chains to turn the corner and make it a little bit pointy. And then we'll go back down the reverse side of that chain. So in this case, we'll do 2 slip stitches. With the slip stitches, you can't really tuck that tail in, so we'll wait later and we'll sew it in. Then we'll single crochet 2 together. 3 single crochet, and and 3 double crochet. You see that nice curve that you get there. And then you just do a slip stitch to the first stitch that you have in. And then you fasten it off. So for this slightly smaller one, you're going to start with 10 chain. Starting in the 3rd chain from the hook, you'll do 3 double crochet, and 3 single crochet, and 2 slip stitch, three chain, and we're doing it reverse on the bottom side. So starting with 2 slip stitch, and then for this next one we're going to do the 2 together. So single crochet 2 together, 1 single crochet, and 3 double crochet. And then with a slip stitch, we'll connect that to the first stitch that we put in and fasten it off. For the littlest section of hair, you start with 8 chain, and then starting from the 3rd chain from the hook, you'll do a double crochet, just 1, and then 3 single, two slip stitch. You then do 3 chains, then the 2 slip stitch, single crochet 2 together, 1 single crochet, and 1 double crochet. And then with a slip stitch, you'll connect that to the first chain, or the first stitch there. The eye is done in black yarn using an H or 8 or 5mm hook. Using a smaller hook makes it so that the holes aren't as big. We'll make the magic ring for this, which you hold your tail, take your working yarn, fold it over, reach through, bring the yarn through it, yarn over, and go through essentially like a slip stitch over the top of it. And then you pull your magic ring a little bit tighter. We then do 6 single crochet into the magic ring. All right, now that we have 6, we can pull it tighter. I still leave it a little bit open. You can see the blue through there, just to give me a little bit of room, because trying to get into this next stitch is a little tight. And all I'm doing is I'll be doing a slip stitch through that first stitch that we did, and that will pull everything tight together so that you have your round. And then you can go ahead and fasten it off, leaving the tail. And at this point, you can pull the initial tail nice and tight so that there is no hole showing in the center here. You then take that original tail, you know, the one that you tightened up from the magic ring. And then in order to get it to stay nice and tight, you just kind of work it back and forth on the back side of those stitches where it's going to be hidden. And that makes it so that that magic ring won't come undone. You want to try to do it kind of shallow because you don't want it to show on the other side. This is when I work in any of the extra tails. Any that you don't need for stitching, you want those out of the way at this point. The first step in putting this little Highland cow together is to put the feet together, because you'll want to put this little brown hoof portion inside this portion here so that it kind of has that border on it. And when you do that, you want to make sure that you have the correct sides facing, because when you did your slip stitch, it's sitting right on the top. Same with this one, slip stitch is right on the top. So that's going to be the top, that's going to be the back side. Okay, so now that I have that in, I go ahead and I just tuck my tail, just same way we did before, going the one direction and then I'll zigzag the other. This part's kind of interesting because trying to figure out the placement, it goes on in layers, so you have to do it in the right layers. The ones that you'll need for this point are the ears, the horns, and one of the feet, the left foot technically. So that left foot, you're going to want to place it 2 inches in from the side and 2 inches in from the bottom. The left ear is going to be 1 inch by 7.5 inches, and I measure right to the tip of that little curve there. The right ear is going to be 6 inches by 7.5 inches for placement. The left horn is going to be 3.25 inches by 8.75 inches. The right will also be 8.75 inches, and then it'll go in 5.25 inches. And you can kind of see how I have them placed with their curvature. One of the things that I like to do with this kind of project is to safety pin them so that they're not going to move anywhere. Then you don't have to worry if you're moving the blanket that you're going to dislodge anything. The big ones that I'm worried about moving right now are these ones that'll be around the head. So one of the ways that you can check that is by putting your head on top, making sure that everything will be covered. This is kind of exciting when you get to this point because you know that you're almost there. You get to actually see what it looks like, all that work that you put into it. I'm going to start down here on the foot, and you'll just do it the same way that you did the previous one when you attached the dark brown. The big thing is to try and go shallow and just catch the top edge of this blanket because you don't want it to show through on the bottom. So you don't go through this hole and then up that one or it would show. You want to go in the areas where the stitches are. Once you get all the way around, it's just time to hide your tail again. And because so much of this is hidden, it's pretty easy to do this kind of shallow line straight through underneath. you can just go around the outside edge. For the left arm, you want to place it 2 inches from the bottom, 2.5 inches from the side where the hand portion would be, you know, if it had hands, and 3 1/4 inches from the top to the edge, so that there's a diagonal there. The bottom needs to be 3 inches from the bottom. And then for the body, I measured at the very top, so you can kind of see that's the center line of your oval. So at the very top of that center line, you're looking at 3 3/4 inches. And at the very bottom of that center line, you're looking at 6 inches from the edge. For the right arm, you're still looking at a 2-inch space from the bottom. And then the top will be 3 3/4 inches. And the bottom part, I go from the largest part of the curve here, and that's going to be 3 1/4 inches. The right back foot is again 2 inches from the bottom, and this time it's 5.5 inches from the side. For placement of the head, I just place it centered between the ears and the horns and the body, have it going slightly over the body and the top of those legs. For this one, I think it's really important that the edges stay crisp so that you can see the delineation from the different pieces. So I'm going to do it a little bit differently. Before I would go right in the middle of my stitch and down, but this time I'm going to go under my stitch. And then I'll go under the next one and connect in that way. And that'll allow that edge to stay up. You could do that with the other pieces too if you wanted. All about preference. I wanted those portions to be really flat. I'm going up underneath the stitch, so under those two. Pull it through. And then I'll go down underneath the one beside it. And I'll go ahead and grab my yarn on the blanket there too. And that leaves that bigger edge there. For the eyes, you want them right about that ear level. And then what I do is I just count in 3 rows from the outside. 3 rows from the outside, and that's where you're going to have your eyes. I like to start on the bottom because the bottom will be covered and it doesn't tend to look as nice. And with these, we're going to do it very similar to how we did the head, where we'll go down underneath as opposed to around that edge. And the reason we're doing it like this is we don't want that edge to be fuzzy at all with our stitches. We want it to be a nice clean circle. You could do a safety eye, but it would be rough. So if you're using this as a blanket, I wouldn't want that little nubbin on the side. And again, I like to kind of end down on that bottom. I am debating a little bit on the nostrils if I like how big they are. So we'll see. If I end up deciding to change that, you might see a little bit different instructions and wonder, like, why are there nostrils right there? When placing the muzzle, you want it centered in between the eyes and just slightly over the eyes. Then we'll do that same stitch that we did on the face on the sides here, because I want it to stand up a little bit more. Since their muzzle tends to be out farther, it just kind of makes sense to me. Since this is a Highland cow, he gets some hair, and that's going to begin at the edge of the horn and go over to the edge of the ear, and I have it slightly overlapping the top of the head so it doesn't look like he has a bald head. So I don't want to be able to see any of that. See, if you look, this is what it would look like if you just crocheted it on the very top here, but this is how you want it to look. You want it to kind of go over that edge. For the placement of your second piece of hair, it's going to be the same, right from the edge of that horn to the edge of this ear. This one's a little bit harder because you have to kind of go under it to catch that whole stitch. Placing that last bit of hair, they're kind of known for having hair in their faces, and so I just have that going right down just above the eye. And it starts between the other two hairs. Ended up deciding to switch the nose out for something that was a little bit smaller. This one, you'll notice, is just down from the edge of the eye. This is always the hardest thing, getting them exactly the same. So I'll want to go about right here. And you have to place them in the stitches that are already there in the right spot so that it won't slide, because of course if it's in a hole instead of the yarn part of the stitch, then it's going to move. And you want this at the same angle. If it was like that, it would look weird, right? So you can kind of check with your needle, make sure it's the same. Okay, and then you can kind of double check it. Like I said, this is like the hardest bit for me, is just making sure that they're exactly the same. And then we'll come up pretty much that same spot, maybe just slightly under it, and then go down next to this. And this hole is just convenient because it's a little bigger and so you can work with it. Now to avoid that dead eye look, we need to do a little light spot in the middle of the eye there. And you can go through the back. I already have a knot on the back of my yarn here. And you just go in between the yarn and then it will go through, hopefully, and you can hide it. You could do this before you put the eyes on if you wanted. And then I'll do a French knot, which I do by wrapping this around it 2 times and then going down right next to the original spot. Then again, I'm going to try to find a spot in between the stitches. Then it's just a matter of pulling it through, which can sometimes be difficult due to the fact that there's so many layers. Okay. And I like to do it in the upper left-hand corner for the cow, my right. And then I'll do it again 2 times around. Pick a spot really close to it. Go straight through. Make sure that I'm in between any of the threads there. Pull it through.